There was a Jew who was unemployed. Unemployed. Some Jew in the shtetl in the small town. He's unemployed, looking for a job, looking, having a hard time. Finally, he found a job. What's the opportunity? The Jews in the shtetl are looking for a volunteer. They're looking not for a volunteer. They were looking to pay for it, for somebody that would stand. Hi, Alex. Would stand outside the entrance of town and check if Moshiach is coming. And as soon as he sees Moshiach coming, he should run and tell all the Jews in the town. Now, they weren't going to pay much, but they'll pay what they could. So he goes home, he tells his wife, we found an opportunity, we could sign with them tomorrow. And she's like, well, what's the pay? Oh, pay is no good. So why do you want this job? The pay is no good, but the job security is phenomenal. This job is going to keep going and going and going. Of course, we have a different perspective. We believe the Moshiach is coming very soon, and that job would not last very long. But the interesting thing is that there is actually somebody in Jewish tradition whose job is to let us know, to inform us that Moshiach is coming. So the joke is not such a joke. But we'll discover who this individual is. It's supposed to tell us that the Moshiach is on his way, and it's actually Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, and he's a little more important of a person in our history than the low-paying job of standing outside of town. So we have to understand who he was, why there's so many legends about it. Why is there so much in Jewish history and even in Jewish culture about Eliyahu Navi? Eliyahu Navi, he appears, he does things. Who is this? Is he a man? Is he an angel? Where did he come from? And what's his story? What's he going to do? What did he do and what will he do when Moshiach comes? So we'll start with a little clip with the history of his time, and then we'll go from where the clip ends. We'll actually read inside the book of Malachim, the book of Kings, so we can fill in the rest of the story.
King David's son Solomon inherited the throne in 837 BCE and built the first holy temple in Jerusalem. Solomon's reign was the high point in all of Jewish history to date, and the nation basked in peace, wealth, and spiritual awareness. But as soon as Solomon died...
Can everybody hear?
No.
Let's try to move that over. No, we don't hear at all. Try.
King David's son Solomon inherited the throne in 837 BCE and built the first holy temple in Jerusalem. Solomon's reign was the high point in all of Jewish history to date, and the nation basked in peace, wealth, and spiritual awareness. But as soon as Solomon died in 797 BCE, the kingdom was split in two, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. The dynasty of King David flourished in Judah, but ruled over just 2 tribes. The remaining 10 tribes in the northern kingdom produced their own chaotic assortment of monarchs. Their kings encouraged idolatry and were often terrible and tyrannical. God sent a steady stream of prophets to rebuke the monarchs and their respective subjects. Ahab was the infamous 7th king of the northern kingdom. He reigned in the mid-800s BCE for 22 years. Ahab was evil and despotic, but his powerful pagan wife outdid him in her depravity. Queen Jezebel was a Phoenician, and she built temples of idolatry and executed almost every prophet of God. Jezebel was bent on converting the Jews into a nation of Baal worshippers. She almost succeeded, but a fearless prophet named Elijah stepped onto the scene. One of Jewish history's most legendary prophets, his major showdown with Ahab and Jezebel came on the heels of an ancient curse. 4 centuries earlier, back in 1273 BCE, Joshua led the Jews in conquest of the Holy Land. His first act of conquest was against the city of Jericho, which fell in an astoundingly miraculous manner. Joshua then uttered a dramatic curse. The man that arises and rebuilds this city Jericho shall be cursed before God. With the loss of his firstborn shall he lay its foundation, and with the loss of his youngest son shall he set up its gates. Until Ahab's times, Jericho lay in ruins, but Ahab's good friend Hiel of Bethel dared to rebuild Jericho. Israel followed in horror as Hiel lost one child after another in the process. The Talmud relates that the evil King Ahab visited Hiel to comfort him. There he met Elijah. Ahab mocked Elijah. Do you associate Hiel's tragedy with Joshua's curse? Nonsense. Moses was greater than Joshua, and even his curse went unfulfilled. Did Moses not warn that if we serve idols, God will withhold the rains? But I erected idols on every hilltop, and look, it's hard to stand outdoors worshiping idols with all these rain showers. Elijah responded to the monarch's public blasphemy by proclaiming the start of a years-long drought throughout the idolatrous kingdom. It is to the sound of an errant nation gasping for water that we begin today's lesson.
So the Jewish people were a mess because King Achav and especially his wife Izebel, who wasn't even Jewish, were bent on spreading idolatry, pagan worship of the Baal, and killing the prophets in the process. Well, Eliyahu Navi wasn't deterred, and he kept spreading the word of God. And as we see, when Ahav challenged him that God's words are not fulfilled, he proclaimed a drought, and it became a drought of famine for many years that there was no rain. But what happened next? So, wrong one. Here we will get what happened next. So this is straight out of the book of Kings. After the 5 books of the Torah, we have the books of the prophets, beginning with Joshua, successor to Moshe, and then goes through the generations till the times of the kings. This is the book of Kings, the first of 2 books of Kings. It was many days after the word of God came to Eliyahu in the 3rd year, saying, Go appear to Achav, and I will give rain upon the surface of the earth. So God said, okay, enough. It's been 3 years of famine. Go back to the king, and I will bring rain, and the famine will be over. So, skipping this part where Eliyahu sent a message ahead that he was coming, here it was when Achav was the king, saw Eliyahu, the Achav said to him, is this you, the one who brings trouble upon Israel? Because Eliyahu was the one who had said there's going to be a drought, and the rain stopped. And he said, I have not brought trouble upon Israel, but you and your father's house, since you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and you went after the Baalim. It's not that I brought the drought, it's your sinning against God that caused the rain to stop. And now send and gather for me all of Israel to Mount Carmel, and the prophets of the Baal 450, and the prophets of Asherah 400, who eat at Izebel's table. So 850 prophets for the idol worship will come and compete with me, Elijah, on the mountain. Achav thought that was a great idea, and they're going to overpower him. So Achav sent among all the children of Israel, and he gathered the prophets to Mount Carmel. And Elijah drew near to the people and said, until when you are hopping between two ideas? If Lord is God, go after him, and if Baal, go after him. And the people did not answer him a word. The people were very confused. The Torah had taught them to follow God, and now they were being shoved Baal down their throat, this idol worship. So they didn't know what to answer. And Eliyahu spoke to the people, I have remained a prophet to the Lord by myself, and the prophets of the Baal are 450 men. And let them give us 2 bulls, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves, and cut it up and place it on the wood. But fire they shall not put. And I will prepare wood, 1 bull, and I will put it on the wood, and fire I will not place. So in other words, a competition. Each one is going to bring an animal as a sacrifice to their God with no fire. And the real God is going to bring the fire to eat the animal. And you will call in the name of your deity, and I will call in the name of the Lord. It will be the God that will answer with fire. He is the God. So we have the terms of the contest. And all of the people answered and said, the thing is good. It's a deal. Whoever's animal gets consumed by miraculous fire from heaven, that's the messenger of God. And Eliyahu said for the prophets of Baal, choose for yourselves the 1 bull and prepare it first, since you are the majority, and call in the name of your deity, on fire place not. So you choose first. You're the majority, 450 prophets of the idol worship. I'll go second. They took the bull that he gave them and prepared it, and they called the name of Baal from morning and to noon, saying, O Baal, answer us. But there was no voice and no answer. And they hopped on the altar that they had made. And it was at noon that Eliyahu scoffed at them, and he said, call with a loud voice, for he is a god. Perhaps he is talking, or he's pursuing enemies, or he's on a journey. Perhaps he's sleeping and will awaken. So Eliyahu started to tease them after hours that they're calling out to their God and nothing is happening. And they called with a loud voice and gashed themselves, was their custom, with swords and lances until blood gushed on them. And as the afternoon passed, and they feigned to prophecy until the time of the sacrifice of the evening offering, and there was no voice and no answer, and no one was listening. So they lost. They couldn't bring the fire. Now is Eliyahu's turn. And Eliyahu said to all the people, come near to me. And all the people came near to him, and he repaired the torn down altar of the Lord. Eliyahu took 12 stones, corresponding to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, Israel shall be your name. So he's built a whole big altar of 12 stones for the 12 Jewish tribes. He built the stones into an altar in the name of the Lord. He made a trench as great as would contain 2 ephah of seed around the altar. He started digging up all the earth around the altar. What was this for? He arranged the wood, he cut up the bull and placed it on the wood. And he said, fill me 4 pitchers of water and pour them on the burnt offerings and on the wood. And he said, repeat it. And they repeated it. And he said, do it a 3rd time. Did it a 3rd time. He wanted to drench it with water and show that God could nevertheless bring the fire. And the water went around the altar, and also the trench he filled with water. And it was when the evening sacrifice was offered that Eliyahu the prophet came near and said, Lord, the God of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yisrael, today let it be known that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant. And at your word I have done all these things. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, and this people shall know that you are the Lord God, and you have turned their hearts backwards. And the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offerings, and the wood, and the stones, and the earth. And the water which was in the trench, it licked up. And all the people saw and fell on their faces, and they said, the Lord is God, the Lord is God. So the demonstration was a success. Eliyahu wasn't done. Eliyahu said to them, seize the prophets of the Baal, let not one of them escape. And they seized them. Eliyahu took them onto Brook Kishon and slew them there. So there were no more pagan prophets. Eliyahu said to Achab, go up, eat and drink, for now you will hear the rumbling sound of the rain. Now he says, okay, we cleaned up, we're ready for the rain. And he tells the king the rain is coming. And Ahab went to eat and drink, and Eliyahu went up to the top of Mount Carmel and crouched on the ground. And he put his head between his knees, praying to God to actually bring the rain. And it was the 7th time that he said, there's a cloud, and he said to his servants, please go and look towards the sea. And he went up and looked, and he said, there is nothing. And he said, go again, 7 times. And it was on the 7th time that he said, there's a cloud as small as a man's palm, rising from the sea. And he said, go up, say to Achab, hitch up the horses to the chariot and descend, lest the rain stop you. So go quick, go home, because the rain is coming. Meanwhile, the heavens grew dark with clouds and wind, and there was a heavy rain. And Ahav rode and went to Jezreel. And the spirit of strength from the Lord was with Eliyahu, and he girdled his loins and ran before Ahav all till coming to Jezreel. Now, what's important there is that he had to actually escape, because Ahav's non-Jewish wife, Izebel, was not satisfied with his show and wanted to kill him. He spent a long time in hiding. The prophet goes on to say the rest of the story. We'll see, we'll touch upon it a little bit as we continue. But what we see is the image of Eliyahu, or Elijah in English. We usually call him Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, who was a fearless man of God, no matter that everybody was against him, stood up for the right tradition of God, and was successful. But what's most unique about Eliyahu, because he wasn't the only one in our history to face such situations, what's most unique is what we're about to read now, and it's in text 1, which you have actually on page, where are we here? Page 32, or 33, yeah. Text 1. Let's bring that up on the screen as well. And Eliyahu took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water, and it divided to this side and to that side. So he was traveling, he split the sea like Moshe did, crossed through, and they both crossed on dry land. That's Eliyahu and his student, Elisha. And it was when they crossed that Eliyahu said to Elisha, ask what I shall do to you while I'm not yet taken away from you. In other words, I'm going to go, your last requests are now. And Elisha said, please let there be a double portion of your spirit on me. You are a man of God, you feel the presence of God. I want that even more. And he said, Eliyahu told him, you have made a difficult request. If you see me taken from you, it will be so to you. And if not, it will not be. So something special is going to happen. If you see it, that means that God is giving you to be that great prophet. If not, then it's not for you. So what happened? And so it was that they were going, walking and talking, and behold, a fiery chariot and fiery horses, and they separated them both. A fire appeared, and Eliyahu disappeared. Eliyahu ascended to heaven in a whirlwind. And Elisha saw, and he was crying, my father, the chariots of Israel and the riders. And he saw him no longer. And he took hold of his garments and rent them into two pieces, because he lost his teacher, Eliyahu, who in a sense died on that day. But that this description is the most important part. The description of his passing is not that he dies like everybody else, but that he ascends to the heaven in this fire. In other words, something unique, which we can translate in maybe different ways. Typically, you ask in Jewish tradition, what happened to Eliyahu Hanavi? The understanding is he became an angel. So he's no longer present. He was taken up there, but he continues to be there. The prophet doesn't describe his death, instead describing how he goes up to heaven, and he's still serving God in that way. And as we see, still has certain responsibilities that he does in Jewish life, as will continue. So, however we describe it, Eliyahu is still ongoing, and that's why we keep seeing, and we'll talk about it, how he keeps appearing. But actually, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu the prophet, is not only after his time, all the way till today, but we also have his story before his time. What we were just discussing, we're talking in the time of the first temple, 2,800 years ago, move back almost 500 years earlier to the time of Moshe. The Jews are in the desert, and we have an interesting reference that we discuss, that Eliyahu and Pinchas have a relationship. Now, who is Pinchas? Pinchas was a tough guy, we know, in the story when the Jews fell for the honey trap of the daughters of Moab, and God was angry and brought a plague because they sinned with adultery and with idol worship, and there was a plague. And the people of Shimon, instead of repenting, they sent their leader to make a point And the leader of Shimon, his name was Zimri, he takes one of these women who were involved in this adulterous situation, takes one of these women, a princess of Midian, and presents her in front of Moshe and all the Jewish people how he is going to take this woman and he is going to be immoral. And all the people kind of froze in shock at his chutzpah to do such a thing in such a way. But actually, Pinchas got up and put an end to it. We know how he did that. It was a bit violent. So Pinchas was the man to rise up kind of at that hour. But interestingly, we say that Pinchas and Eliyahu are the same person. Let's first read that and then try to understand it. We read that in text 2, which is page 34. So Eliyahu escaped and fled to Mount Chorev. Mount Chorev is Mount Sinai. In other words, he's running away from Achav and his wife Izevel right after that story, and he went all the way out of the country and into the desert to find safety. As the verse states, and he got up and ate and drank. There God revealed himself to Eliyahu. God asked him, "What are you doing here, Eliyahu?" And he says, "I've been zealous for God. I stood up and made this spectacle, and now my life is in danger." So the response was, "You have always been zealous. You were zealous in Shittim to stand up to promiscuity," as the verse states. Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, was the one who got up and put an end to it. And here too, you have been zealous. Here's where we see that Pinchas and Eliyahu are the same person. Now, what does that mean? It's interesting to discuss. Does that mean they have the same neshama, the same soul that started off as Pinchas and later was Eliyahu? Is it physically the same person that lived for so many centuries? Or as others in the Talmud write, they're not actually the same person. But what's relevant for our discussion is that there is a relationship between Pinchas and Eliyahu. They are the same in some way, and that's going to be important as we continue. Now, where do we find Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, in Jewish history after the story how he died, how he went up to heaven? Where do we see him again? Well, one of the places we see him again is at a bris. Every bris, every time there's a circumcision, Eliyahu Hanavi appears, and we see this in text 3. That's page 35. It's customary to set aside a chair for Eliyahu, the angel of the bris milah. When the baby is placed on the chair, we proclaim, "This is the chair of Eliyahu." So if you pay close attention at the bris, you see that there's a special chair, and the one holding the baby sits on that chair. What's the chair? So there's a reading that we announced before. This is the chair for Eliyahu Hanavi because the presence of Elijah the prophet is at every bris. Why? Well, an interesting explanation is that after that reading where we talked about Eliyahu ran away and he said, "I was zealous for God," he said more than that. He said, "I was zealous for God because the Jewish people abandoned your ways. The Jewish people were no good." So God said, "You think my people abandoned my ways? I will show you." They did not let go of, he said, "Azvu brischa b'nei Yisrael." They abandoned your covenant. He said, "No, they keep my covenant. My covenant, the circumcision, the bris milah, they still do it, and you're going to show up every time to testify." That's something that's very special for our shul and for many of the people sitting here. They had a bris, the circumcision, late in life because of the communists preventing us having it earlier. And you could have thought, like Eliyahu said, that the Jews gave up and abandoned the ways of God. And God says, "No, no, no. You come to the bris, you'll see the Jews don't give up. As soon as they have the chance, doesn't matter how old they are, they keep doing the mitzvah." So Eliyahu keeps showing up, bringing his blessing and bringing his presence to every circumcision and seeing with his own eyes that the Jews are still loyal. There's another famous time that Eliyahu shows up. Does anyone remember what it is?
Yeah, during the Pesach.
During Pesach, exactly. So we open the door. We actually fill a special cup that we don't drink, the cup of Elijah the prophet, and we open the door to welcome him. What are we trying to do? Because Eliyahu actually appears at every Seder, at every time we celebrate that Passover Seder on that first special night of Pesach, he is there to participate with us. Why at that time? And why do we make such a spectacle out of it? One of the explanations we'll see, we'll skip one text, we'll see it in text 5 on page 38. I suggest the following explanation for this custom. The Hallel and Nirtzah sections of the Seder are to arouse God's mercy and evoke our merit before God so that he redeem us with the final redemption. The last portion of the Seder, where we have the special prayers at the end, we're actually asking God to finally send us the Moshiach. For this reason, we must let our children know and publicize our tradition from the prophets that prior to Moshiach's arrival, Eliyahu will come and announce the redemption. Scripture makes it clear that prior to Moshiach's arrival to his holy chamber, Eliyahu will arrive, and thus his arrival is the clear sign that Moshiach, who comes after, is the true Redeemer. This is a fundamental piece in our messianic belief and anticipation that guards us from falling into a trap of a false Moshiach. So Maharal in this explanation tells us, why do we make this spectacle at the Seder? To remind everyone when we're praying for Moshiach that Eliyahu is going to be the one to come tell us the Moshiach is about to arrive. He has that special role to play. Now, it's not only at the Seder and it's not only at the Bris, but if you look in any Jewish story, true or legend, usually the miracle happens when Eliyahu Hanavi appears. Great tzaddikim, great righteous men who studied the Kabbalah or other things, are said to have experienced the presence of Eliyahu Hanavi coming to teach them. The Jew finds himself in distress, and somebody comes out of the blue to help him. It might be his neighbor, or just somebody that he doesn't know. But a Jew's reaction is often, oh, Elijah the prophet showed up for me. He helped me when I was stuck on the road. Whether or not that's the case varies. But that's in the Jewish tradition. Eliyahu Hanavi is very present and would appear in certain situations for a certain message to help the Jewish people. And ultimately, to the extreme, the most important time by the coming of Moshiach. How do we know about this? Where do we get this idea from? Why do we think that Eliyahu will come to broadcast the coming of Moshiach? Let's see. This we read in the prophet Malachi, one of the last prophets. Behold, I will send you Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, before the coming of the great and awesome day of God. I'll send you Eliyahu Hanavi before the day of God comes, before the day of the coming of Moshiach. So watch out, look and see. Eliyahu Hanavi will come to show us the way. But there's something else we need to know, and that's in text 7, which is on page 40 of 41, but we're going to go all the way to the end of it. The last paragraph where he says the Talmud rejects this argument, because it gets a little tricky before. I'm going to skip that part. The idea is that somebody made a promise. Somebody vows, I'm going to be a Nazir. A Nazir is someone who lets their hair grow and doesn't drink wine, etc. When will I be a Nazir? When the Mashiach comes. On the day Mashiach comes. So the Talmud says something very interesting. On weekdays, he cannot drink wine, because that might be the day. You never know. Mashiach come today. But on Shabbat, he could drink wine. Why? So we sit and analyze and try to figure it out. And we say one explanation that Eliyahu has to come the previous day to say Mashiach is coming. If he didn't come yesterday, Mashiach won't come today. So he's safe to drink wine. The obvious question is, well, then he should be able to drink wine every day. Why only on Shabbos? Because of the Kiddush? What's going on? Let's see. Text 7 at the end, the last paragraph on page 41. The Talmud rejects this argument. If so, on weekdays too, he should be permitted to drink wine, as Eliyahu did not arrive the previous day. Rather, the reason for the prohibition on weekdays must be that we say that Eliyahu may already have arrived at the great court, but it has not yet become a matter of public knowledge. Likewise, here too, we should say that Eliyahu already arrived in the previous day at the great court on the eve of Shabbos or a festival. So this gives us a very important piece of information. Not everybody will necessarily know that Eliyahu came. He could have come yesterday and we don't know because he showed up at the great court. He showed up in Tveria, in Tiberias, which is where the Jewish court will be reinstated first before going to Jerusalem. Maybe he showed up there to tell them Moshiach is coming. So Moshiach is still likely to come today, even if we didn't actually meet Eliyahu yesterday. The only issue is Shabbos, because on Friday, the Talmud continues to say Eliyahu won't come on Friday, so the Jews are busy getting ready for Shabbos. That creates another problem. Do we really believe that Moshiach cannot come on Shabbos? The normal understanding for the Jewish people is that Moshiach can come at any moment. Especially in the Rebbe's talks, which were most often on Shabbos, he would say, Moshiach can walk in right now. And as the Rebbe explained in this concept, that Eliyahu actually does arrive every day to the great court in Tiberias to tell them Moshiach is coming, because he can potentially come every day. So what's this with the Shabbos? Does he come on Friday or not come on Friday? And if he doesn't come on Friday, how can Moshiach come on Shabbos? So there's a number of explanations. One of them we have here in text 8. So text 8 is page 42. Our sages' postulation that if they are worthy, I will hasten it, if not in its time, is well known. So we talked about this in the first class, that Moshiach can come speedily, miraculously, because of our special mitzvahs, or at the last moment, the slow and conventional way. Now, Eliyahu's role to announce the redemption is certainly an integral part of the Messianic process, but it is only necessary if the redemption happens in its time. However, if the Jews are worthy enough to hasten the redemption, God will skip over mountains and jump over hills and change protocol. For the love God displays to his worthy people will bend the rules. Of course, it is very much appropriate that Eliyahu arrive and announce the redemption, but it is not necessary per se, for perhaps God will have mercy on his people and bestow upon them a Holy Spirit to rouse them to serve him wholeheartedly. Then the redemption will be hastened so that Moshiach can arrive even without Eliyahu's announcements. So we don't actually feel committed to promise and guarantee that Eliyahu has to come before Moshiach comes. The process is that he comes the day before, and then you get into issues with Friday. But if we're in a high-speed version, if we're on the miracle version, we can skip steps. We've been talking about it in the past classes. We can also skip this step. We might not want to. We'll see that next week. What does Eliyahu actually do? Why is it so important that he give us the message that Mashiach is coming? If Eliyahu doesn't give us the message, we can get it from Google. Why do we need Eliyahu to show up and tell us? Why do we need the message? Why do we need such a special person? What is his actual role? We'll see next week as we talk more about Eliyahu. What does he do right before Mashiach comes, and how important that is in making it happen? But the idea that he has to come exactly a day before, and there are certain rules, we're not necessarily bound to the rules in the high-speed version. There are also other explanations. Other explanations to understand that Eliyahu could come on Friday and Moshiach can come on Shabbos. First of all, as the Rebbe mentioned many times, we don't worry about these questions, because let Eliyahu show up on Friday and Moshiach on Shabbos, and they'll have to answer the question. They'll come up with a good explanation. But in another sense, the Talmud says, why does Eliyahu not come on Friday? The reason the Talmud gives is because we're busy preparing for Shabbos, and he doesn't want to bother us. So the Rebbe says, after 2,000 years nearly in the exile, Jews will give a pass. We'll let Eliyahu know, you can bother us. If that's your news, you can bother us. As somebody once said, if it's good news, I'm home. If not, I'm busy. For the good news, you can come tell us even on Friday, we accept it. In other words, the whole idea is only for our benefit, not to disturb the Jewish people on Friday. In our situation, we'd rather that disturbance. In any case, we get back to the general idea of Eliyahu coming before Moshiach comes. Now, if you think about who Eliyahu was and what we read, we really want him to come and say Moshiach comes, but he seems like a tough guy. Is he going to come and tell me that I'm doing the wrong thing? Is he going to come and tell us what he told the Jews on the mountain? Either you worship God or you worship the Baal, make up your mind. Is he going to be aggressive? Is he going to come with a big long spear like his first version, like Pinchas? Is it safe, Eliyahu, or is he frightening? He sounds frightening so far. In other words, is he going to be the nice guy version, like throughout history? He's coming to the Seder, he's coming to the bris, he's helping people in miraculous ways? Or is he going to be the original version, which seems kind of frightening? But let's go back to what happened with Pinchas. What happened after Pinchas made his move, killed Zimri and the woman he was with, and stopped the plague by stopping this kind of activity? What happened? God rewarded him. But God didn't just reward him, he rewarded him in a strange way. He rewarded him with a blessing of peace. Let's see text 9, page 45. So we can hear about the peace. According to the idea that Pinchas is the same person as Eliyahu, this blessing of peace is understood based on the Talmud, which states that Eliyahu will bring peace to the world. So we're going to discuss next week how Eliyahu comes to bring peace. So God's reward to Pinchas is the mission of Eliyahu to be the man of peace, to bring peace before the coming of Moshiach. But that doesn't seem to be the right reward for a warrior who was there to kill the one who was doing the wrong thing. He doesn't seem like a man of peace. He seems like the security guard. Let's continue. God blessed Pinchas with the privilege of restoring peace in the world in the future when Moshiach comes, as a reward for the peace he restored between God and the Jewish people when he stopped the plague. Pinchas did bring peace. It's a different kind of peace, but that's peace nonetheless, and that's the foundation of a true peace. We were separated from God by that kind of behavior. Pinchas reunited us with God. And from there can come the peace of us being reunited with each other, and peace on this earth being reunited among people that starts with peace with God, with us being reunited to God as we were then. In other words, we tend to think of Pinchas as this tough guy, as the zealot. And in fact, at that time, when Pinchas did his move, not everybody was so happy with him. Rashi tells us that the other Jews were saying, wait a second, who is this kid, a very young man at the time, grandson of Aaron, who gets up and he's going to kill a prince, Zimri, leader of the tribe of Shimon? Who does he think he is? And in other words, as the Rebbe explains, they're saying, what, we're going to let all these violent kids run loose and kill people? Something big. It'll be gone. So, that I don't know. As long as none of us are Zimri, we'll be all right. So, the people weren't necessarily so impressed. At least some people suspected that this is just an extremist, a violent guy. Maybe we don't honor this action. Maybe he should be punished for this action. God said something interesting when the Torah repeats that he's going to be rewarded. The Torah re-identifies him. The Torah says, "Who is Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the grandson of Aaron the Kohen?" Aaron the Kohen was famous for one thing, for bringing peace among people. Peace among people, peace between families, peace among people who would fight with each other. So the Torah says when Aaron died, all the people mourned. Because all the people, even those who weren't scholars to appreciate the Torah that Moses taught, or other people that weren't great in any other way, everybody loved Aaron. Because Aaron was a people's person. He brought peace among all the Jews. He solved all their fighting among themselves. He was the man to do it. He was a man of love for every Jew. So God says, this Pinchas is not about violence. He's a grandson of Aaron. He's the man of peace, the man of love. You just don't understand how it was necessary to eliminate this kind of person in order to restore the peace between God and the Jewish people. But really, the idea of Pinchas is not to be the tough guy. The idea of Pinchas is to be that person of love, and that's why I'm going to give him the mission of the love and peace of the coming of Moshiach, which Eliyahu, who is also Pinchas, will do. In other words, we look at Pinchas, we look at Eliyahu, we look at their standing tall and without any fear in these situations, and we think it's about being a tough guy, but really ultimately it's about the love of the Jewish people and the love of every individual, and this teaches us the lesson. This teaches us what we need to do when we want the Moshiach to come. Because it's easy, unfortunately, for us to take the wrong message from Pinchas. It's easy for us to say that Pinchas is the tough guy. I'm going to be the tough guy. I'm going to come to the synagogue. Now I see someone doing something wrong. I'm going to call him out from across the room. I'm going to stand up for what's right. I'm going to walk down the street and I'm going to call people out. I'm going to set the record straight. The Rebbe tells us it's got to work a little bit differently. Let's look at text 10, page 46. This is the significance of the idea that Pinchas is Eliyahu. Pinchas was a man of peace, namely peace and harmony between one Jew and another. This harmony is Eliyahu, namely it will bring Eliyahu, the one who will come and tell us that Moshiach is coming tomorrow and take us out of exile, may be very soon. If we want the Moshiach to come, the way we do that is not through the tough side. It's not through being zealous all the time, but it's through that love and that peace that they showed to every person, however he would need that, to bring them in. Pinchas Eliyahu, because of that love of the grandson of Aaron, he's able to bring the Moshiach. This is something that the Rebbe embodied. The Rebbe would get complaints, often I should say, that he's showing too much kindness and love to Jews who do the wrong thing, embracing them, taking them in. And the Rebbe said, no, it doesn't work that way. You want to connect, you want to help somebody to be closer to God, you want to help bring the Moshiach. You're not going to do it by being the tough guy. You're going to do it by that side of Pinchas, that side of Eliyahu, which we discovered today, which is actually the love and the peace that God rewarded Pinchas with. It's interesting that the Rebbe himself had the same question, if you will. How is it possible to show such love to maybe people who don't deserve it, maybe people who are doing the wrong thing? How do we know this? Because a student who was in a student who was in 770 in the original Chabad Yeshiva in Brooklyn in the 40s, the 1940s, in the time of the previous Rebbe, he heard this from the Rebbe. The Rebbe came out into the lobby there and met some of the boys, and he said, I want to tell you something my father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, just taught me. The Rebbe said, I sit in the office in the 770 where the Rebbe would run the organizations of Chabad, And people come in, all kinds of people. A lot of them are not very good Jews, to say the least. Some of them are maybe a little bit bad or more than a little. But I show everyone kindness, I embrace them, and I bring them in. And I started to get complaints. Some very religious Jews said, how can you do that? You got to be strict on these people. You can't be the nice guy. So I was unsure. So I went to ask my father-in-law, the previous Rebbe. My father-in-law says, no. A parent will always love a child. A parent will love every child. If they have many children, they'll love them all. But sometimes a parent has, unfortunately, a handicapped child, a child with a problem. That child with a problem is where you see more love and concern from the parents to that child. So when you see a Jew who's, like every Jew, a child to God, but he has a problem, he's handicapped in some way, something about his behavior is wrong. You might say, this guy is out. But God says, that's my handicapped child. I love him more. It's okay for you, the previous Rebbe tells the Rebbe, to be like God and show him increased love, and that way to maintain the connection. So in other words, when we talk about Eliyahu coming to tell us that the Moshiach is coming, it's also a message of, you want an announcement that Moshiach is coming? Do you want to get that news? Do you want to reach that point? Well, the way we reach that point is when we say, when we act with that loving kindness of Eliyahu, where we see every bris, we see the connection that the Jew has. We try to develop that connection instead of trying to push someone out because they're not good enough. So we'll take any questions that remain, whether from Alex or Alan or any of us here. And I know it's a little hot, so we can also end a little early if need be. And I also see that the heat overpowered the spraying today. But hopefully next week we'll be better off. Everybody's thinking. Sorry? There's supposed to be at some point. Well, like Elijah, he kept praying and praying. It was supposed to rain today. Once the rain comes, maybe it won't be so hot.